Well, hello everyone, and welcome in. Welcome into another Sunday afternoon with the six screens, and we have JW World News coming up here next. Boy, I'll tell you, did you hear that interview on the program that was on before us with Anne Marie and Larry John Wayne? What a program. Boy, I'll tell you, what an interview. Boy, the witnesses have a lot of gall. They really do. So we're so glad that you're here with us now. And we do have a number of programs still coming up on the six screens today. After this program at 4 o'clock, the Christian Court, and then Jay Hess answering your Bible questions. So let's get right into it. My name is Rick Farron. I'm up here at the hub of the universe, up here in Boston, Massachusetts. And we do the Sunday edition every 2 weeks. So let's take a look and see what's going on behind the curtains of the Watchtower. Well, I have to tell you, I'm glad we have the country of Japan. Japan is now on our side. I suppose you could call Japan an apostate too, to some degree, because Japan is not going to tolerate what witnesses have been doing in Japan for many years. And Japan is not going to let the witnesses get away sacrificing their children and actually having children die because of the blood policies of the Watchtower. So Japan now says, no, it's not going to happen on our watch. And Japanese officials, the Japanese government has actually ruled when a witness steps in and doesn't want their child to have a blood transfusion, it constitutes child abuse. Now, we know that we've been talking about sex abuse for years here on the six screens, but that's abuse too, isn't it? There's all kinds of abuse, but when you allow your child to die because of following the policies of the Watchtower, and that baby dies, well, that's abuse. Abuse that, in my estimation, is even worse than child abuse, sex abuse. You're letting a child die. So the Jehovah's Witnesses, of course, they pander up to the Japanese government, and they tell the government, well, we really don't force anyone to not take a blood transfusion. Well, that's a bald-faced lie. That's hypocritical. They claim that, they told the government, Japan, well, we don't force anyone to not take a blood transfusion. We know that's not true. Yes, in fact, parents, they make medical decisions all around the world for their children when, in essence, they have no right to be doing that. How can a child, even speak up for themselves if they're only a small child, say a minor? How can they really even make an honest position or take an honest position on this? So I'm glad Japan, kudos to Japan, coming down on Jehovah's Witnesses. And, Japan, they've been having hearings from ex-witnesses coming forward in the last year. And boy, they talked to quite a bit of ex-witnesses, and they got an entirely different story from the ex-witnesses than they did from the Watchtower. And they had a young Japanese ex-witness woman on, and they were talking to her about how coercive is the Jehovah's Witness organization. And because they wanted to know the facts. Do they really cut you off if you go against their policies? Do they shun you? Do they excommunicate you and then treat you as though you're dead? And this ex-Jehovah's Witness woman, she claimed that's the truth. And in fact, anyone listening to this program tonight, or today, I should say, that have been disfellowshipped from the Watchtower, you know what I'm talking about. You are considered spiritually dead, even though the Watchtower tries to present an entirely different view to the world. So anyways, we're glad that Japan is now coming down on the witnesses, and it gives me chills. I couldn't imagine, and I'm glad it never happened when I was a witness, but we had 5 children. But I have to tell you, if one of those children ever needed a blood transfusion to stay alive, I would have broke ties with the Watchtower. I would have. I had that already planned. As a matter of fact, even my former wife, I had a plan that if anything ever happened to her and she needed blood, bye-bye Watchtower. I wasn't going to stand by and watch my former wife die, or even my children die if they needed a blood transfusion. And I'm sure there's many witnesses that take that position. But you know what? Not all witnesses would. They would allow their child to die for the sake of following the policies of the Watchtower. Terrible. Well, anyways, you folks have noticed it. I have noticed it. The great dumbing down of the Watchtower. It's happening as we speak. It's getting dumber and dumber by the minute. And, I've got a number of books here, like Larry John Wayne just had. I got a bunch of the Insight books, Aid to Bible Understanding, Older Watchtowers. And I must say that, boy, these books had hardy, beefy writings in them. They were written like at a college level. But the magazines you're seeing today and the publications that the Watchtower is coming out with, it's like so elementary. It's dumbing down. So, I can remember even, people like Ray Franz, who was a governing body member. He, of course, did research study on his own. He left, but he was involved with the Aid book. He was no dumbbell. And Ed Dunlap and some of these high officials of the Watchtower, they knew how to defend themselves. But Ray Franz, he got smart and he left, and Dunlap too. They left because they could see the Watchtower was going in the wrong direction. So you guys remember people like that too. Some of your old circuit overseers and district overseers. They were pretty smart Jehovah's Witnesses. They could talk really well. Some of the district overseers were great speakers. But today it's all dumbed down. It's a different organization. The Watchtower doesn't pride themselves on deep research anymore. Everything seems to be scripted and dictated. It really is. I approached the Jehovah's Witness cart a while back, and there was two Spanish women at the cart. And so I approached him, and I was, I didn't come on telling them I was an ex-witness, but I just wanted to say, hey, you have some literature here. And well, tell me what your premise is. Well, what is your hope for the future? So, go to jw.org. Go to jw.org. So that's all they want you to do. They want you to get on the internet and check out jw.org, listen to the videos, and they'll bring you into the truth. Now, they don't even have to get into debates. As a matter of fact, the Watchtower doesn't want witnesses debating anymore. They really don't. They don't want witnesses to get into a debate with a Christian, and they're discouraging that. So they're even being instructed, if they go in door to door in the cart work, that, if a born-again Christian or someone comes up to them and they start getting into a debate with them, they just to clam up and tell the people to go to jw.org, and that's where they'll get their answers. So you guys know what I'm talking about. It really is. It's noticeable. Maybe for someone that hasn't been in for a long time, maybe if you've only been in for the last 5 years, you might not notice it as much. But some of us that were in for quite a while, this is not your grandfather's Oldsmobile anymore, friends. This is a different animal altogether. And the organization, they want to keep you dumbed down. This is a way they're getting away with programming you. So when you look at a Kingdom Hall today, you walk into a congregation, you're going to see people in that congregation, for the most part, with a grade level 5 mentality. Do you remember when you were in the 5th grade? You were about 11 years old. And when you're 11, you're still a kid, but you're also, moving forward to adulthood. So there's a lot of things running through your mind that you're not quite sure of. You might believe the Easter Bunny is still real, or Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy. But, you're starting to come to grips with some of these things, and you're thinking about it. Well, that's where the witnesses are right now. They're in a grade level 5 mentality. And not all, but if you go to a modern day Kingdom Hall as of today, for example, you'll see what I'm talking about. So they're not going to in any way be encouraged to be a critical thinker. The Watchtower will do your thinking for you. That's the position. That's the position that the Watchtower is in right now. They don't want you at all, as we say, reasoning or sitting down and debating or even discussing the scriptures with someone that's quite knowledgeable. So it's crazy to me how things have really changed. But I have to tell you, I can remember I was somewhat of an elite witness. I can remember an elder got up on our Kingdom Hall and he said to the audience, he said, now look, when you guys go out in service, don't you worry one bit. You are way smarter spiritually than anyone you're ever going to meet at the door. He said, I don't care if you meet a theologian. I don't care if you talk to a scholar, a born again Christian. You have Jehovah on your side, and nobody is going to be able to challenge you. So, I mean, that's why a lot of witnesses went around with their nose in the air. I mean, we thought that we were like the only people on the planet that understood the Bible. How wrong we were. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you, ironically, they're the most unlearned Bible group on the planet. Everything they tried to tell or prophesy or explain, it's nuts. It's really, really nuts. And the truth is, the Jehovah's Witness knowledge of the scriptures is seriously low. I mean, low, low, low. They're not. They're not scarce. They're not scripturally astute. You know it. I know it. And I have to say too. There was I mentioned this last night, but I'm going to mention again because it's stuck in my mind. You know what they used to say? Uh, we'd go door to door, and the door would be slammed on us. People didn't want us around. I mean, really, some people open the door and talk, but most people would open it. Who are you, Jehovah's Witnesses? Slam. I mean, that's not a fun thing either, getting the door slammed in your face either, right? But when the witnesses were a little discouraged, and in fact, I can remember that this is what they would say. In fact, one particular elder, he would say when people slam the doors on us out in service, he says they are the people that do that. They're just intimidated because of our knowledge of the Bible. We all bought that. They were just kind of jealous because we had so much knowledge about the Bible. That is foolish. They don't have any knowledge of the Bible, and certainly people weren't slamming the door because they were intimidated by the witness's knowledge. Forget about that. Yep. So we're smarter than everybody else. When I was Jehovah's Witness, that's what we felt. We're smarter than everybody else, and we have Jehovah's backing. Yeah. So isn't it something? Isn't it you've seen the organization progress right along? Uh, it's something else, but you know what seemed to really bring the witness organization down more than ever? Now, if you were an active witness back in the 1980s and 90s, you kind of you couldn't really research too much. The internet wasn't really in existence in the early 90s. It came about, but prior to that, you couldn't do much. Couldn't do much for research. The library in the back room had basically nothing in it. So how much research could you do? And you didn't want to go off to a library and do this. Is that you, Chewy? You want to come in, Chewy?
Well, I think I'm unmuted, but I think somebody else was.
All right. It looks like we, yeah. Okay. Well, hold on, Chewy. Let's bring Michigan in. Come on in, Michael. I know you're on with us.
Oh, hello. No, I just was going to say, Rick, I think about the dumbing down. I think that's an issue too, just generally in society. I'm sure you're well aware of that. Young people today are, a lot of them are dumb as rocks. They're smoking dope. I'm sure you're aware of what they teach in the schools now. So I think that's an issue just in society in general. So I think the Watchtower is kind of just partly dumbing down because the society has partly. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but
well, I think there's a dumbing down of a lot of things today, Mike. But the Watchtower really is. If you approach them at the cart, if you see witnesses at a cart, approach them in a fine way. and just kind of look up, go to them like you're an interested person, and they're not gonna get into any scriptural discussion with you. The first thing they
No,
want
I
you,
understand.
they don't.
They want you to go to the website. I understand that.
But you can
No,
remember,
yeah, I agree with you. It's
yeah.
changed, but I guess you could say this, Rick. If you read the history of it, my understanding is if you go back even to the 40s, I can remember reading the Watchtower, 30-year Watchtower slave. He said they had, that's one reason they brought out the ministry school. Some of these witnesses were so dumb they couldn't name you the first 5 books of the Bible. So, they had, like, during the wars, like maybe men were going in for trying to get conscientious objection, but some of them, I remember he said one man actually told the judge, well, I'm not that kind of minister. I have a testimony card. They just read a card off, or before that they just had a phonograph. So it's not, I guess you could say the society done this in the past too. Now the books were probably more advanced at that time, but the witnesses weren't, they weren't all that bright back then either.
Well, I have to tell you though, Mike, really, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. I'm sure it happened to you as well. I've learned, I learned the Bible books from the Watchtower. I learned how to thumb through a Bible and get to a scripture pretty quick. I enjoyed studying the Watchtower when I was in. Of course, I understand now I wasn't getting the real truth from the scriptures, but I must say the Watchtower did teach me some things. It wasn't all wasted time, even though a lot of it was. But if you paid attention, you could learn a few things scripturally. So I do say that they did help me understand that. But well, thank you, Mike, for coming in. Thank you for being part of the program today. Always good to hear from you. And Chewy, what did you have to say, Chewy? You on with us?
Well, I didn't hear old Larry. I thought I heard a little bit of it, but he made a reference to why witnesses are attracted to multi-level marketing companies. And they're dumbing this thing down so they don't have any products coming out. See, when you're in a multi-level marketing company, you got to have a new product coming out every 6 months, every 3 months. You got to have something new. Man, when we back in the 80s and 90s, man, we used to go to a convention and sometimes we get 2 and 3 brochures and a book on top of it. Boy, we were flying high, man. Man, we went home and we read those things and blah, 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 blah. When is the last time that happened? Even before COVID. Even before then. It ain't the same thing. They don't, their information and their assemblies is just general. It's just general everyday life stuff. It's nothing there. There's no content there whatsoever. Anyway, that's all I got.
Well, that's enough. I mean, you said a mouthful, Chewy. So that's good. But thank you. But before we go to the program, I wanted to bring up one thing too, and I did mention it last night. But I got a number of reports coming in here to the Six Screens newsroom, and the Bethelites, from what we have been gathering, they are no longer able to bring visitors to their room at Bethel.
Oh, wow.
Now that is something that now I can't confirm it. I don't want anyone to take it to the bank and cash it. But in the last week, a person got a hold of me and started telling me that they're making big changes for what the Bethelites are doing. And what they don't want the Bethelites bringing people into their rooms anymore. And they're hiding something, this person told me. And they don't want people either eating in the cafeterias with the Bethelites. Before I ate in the Bethelites, cafeteria, but you can't do it anymore according to the source. But this idea of not letting them go in the rooms, and it was brought to my attention. The person that gave me this information said that they don't want the visitors to see all of the empty rooms at Bethel. They've got rid of a lot of people. And then they said, now I can't confirm it, so don't, at this point, it's still kind of like out there. But I'm going to try to get the person on maybe next week and tell us more, or next couple of weeks, I hope. But the point that I'm trying to make is what they said is, because they didn't want any of the Bethelites to speak up and tell their relatives or friends about all the empty rooms and all the people they're laying off. So they actually are offering the Bethelites, if they can just be quiet, and they know some of them are going to be cut loose too. they're going to give them $1,500. They put them like on a gag order that, if you say nothing and even after you leave, don't let people know what was going on, we'll pay you $1,500. So sounds a little fishy, doesn't it, Chewy? But I'll tell you what, the person that gave me this information is not a dummy, not a dummy. So we'll be talking more about that. Yeah, that rocked my boat this week. Yes.
Well, let me just say this.
Yeah.
Let me just say this. And you think if they took just a regular witness into their room, they're going to get in a conversation with them. More so than a meal, more so than a tour. They're going to get in the conversation with them. So that's what they don't want happening.
I didn't think of that, Chewy. I didn't think of that, but that's right too, isn't it, huh? You get these people coming in from the outside, the PMOs. So we got some action going on. Yep.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
It's Eric.
Hi.
And I just wanted to add a little something to your show about the dumbing down because it struck a nerve a little bit. My wife and I, Desiree, always talk amongst ourselves saying how both of our mothers, are stuck in a 16-year-old mind. And it really is true. They play games. They run the household of the men when they shouldn't. Her mother lets her husband run the household somewhat, but my mother has complete control. But ultimately these women control their men. And I know there's a feminist movement and things like that, but wherever you stand on it can be your own personal view of it, but they do run the roost, and they're very unintelligent, very stupid people. And they stupid people shouldn't be running the ship, which is part of the problem we have with our president. But I digress. But I believe that we've been dumbed down so badly that anybody that is, if you talk enough sense, you lose your mind. It's in a lyric in a song. It just, you start to lose your mind because nobody else can see clarity. Nobody else can see the truth around you. But that's all I wanted to add to your show. Thanks, Rick.
Well, appreciate it, Eric. Always appreciate it. Always glad to hear from Eric. Well, we're going to be going to the Christian Court program. I got some really good questions that people have been writing me with. So we got coming up today in the court. We got some great questions. And just to give you a little idea to keep you in here, how should Christians feel about AI, artificial intelligence? In fact, some churches now are actually having artificial intelligence write their sermons. And another question you'll be hearing on the court today, this person wanted to know, because of coming out of the Watchtower, can demons attach themselves to non-living inanimate objects? Those are just a couple of the questions we'll be discussing on the court today. So we're looking forward to that. So we're going to end this program right now. We're going to go over to the Christian Court program. Thank you very much for coming into JW World News. And remember, the last one leaving the Watchtower, please turn off the new light. Let's end the program here.